Welcome everybody to Influencing, Assertiveness and Negotiation for Representation, Equity and Commercial Inclusion with me, Matthew Hill. What can we achieve today? We'll be looking at the most effective influencing methods for leveraging minority interests for gain and inclusion, finding hidden sources of power to access representation, equity and self-determination. And we've got a busy session for you today. So try and keep up, scribble down a few notes, and we have an aide de memoire to offer you at the end. Today we ask, where does it all go wrong? Power. How can it be misused? Do you have it? And where can you find it? Your ally network. What do you need to do to expand that? Engagement. What will move you up this valuable ladder? Difficult people, what are they doing? Why are they doing it? And what can you do? And we have a controversial hypothesis to put to you, that there are only 7 arguments to be faced. You can learn to use them, and you can learn to defend yourself against them. Face, we have some subtle tools for you as well. Here we look at status, dignity, maintaining face for mutual gain. Listening. Are you listening now? Most of you are not actively listening now. Find out what you're doing instead. And action. We turn it over to you at the end and ask, what will your next move be? Let's start with the first section. Where does it all go wrong? We have strategies to escape the disasters below and help you to greater success in your negotiations. Take a moment to pen a word or two on what went wrong for you in your negotiations over the last 12 months. Are you writing something? Often people state being outmaneuvered by the other party or being outpowered, getting caught out and being unprepared for a left field argument or negotiation device, or not having a clever response to counter a sharp tactic from the other side, or the other side just won't listen, take you seriously or care. And finally, when we feel isolated and unsupported. We are on our way. I just want to take a moment, now that we're warmed up and we've got started, to talk to you about our philosophy when it comes to influencing assertiveness and negotiation. We tend to take our viewpoint and be very much inspired by the mechanisms of mediation. This includes allowing for fair representation for each party. This alone will even up the power within the context of any negotiation, and normally leads to better outcomes and a healthier distribution of value for all parties concerned. For influencing, we believe in managing expectations. Again, an example from mediation. At the intake, at the beginning of these mediation sessions, we normally make an unfunny joke. You have been warned. The sign of a good mediation outcome is when both parties are only mildly disappointed. You may not be laughing now, but it doesn't matter. It is true. Assertiveness. We like to recommend borrowing authority to get off to a quick start. For example, my own story. Did you know I've worked for 5 governments and written 6 books? No? Well, you do now. By the way, authorship is a speedy route to engagement and credibility. Okay, let's get back to the main material. Power. Do you have it? Let's talk about the dynamics of power first. It can be a disaster when the other party have too much power, a disaster for them. This is a warning for all conquering groups. The cost of a complete win-lose deal can come later in the form of resentment and residue, leading to feelings of hostility and actions that represent revenge. Your total victory may be expensive. And for the minor party, remember this: you are never without power. Never. And related to this, no one has a permanent monopoly on power either. I like to think we're in the business of creating options and looking at broader possibilities and outcomes. Giving some of your power to the other party makes sense. We're building a bigger pie, creating a better feeling, and originating more options for a richer deal to emerge. The simplest way of doing this is in the trading of concessions. Ask yourself, in your last deal, what was cheap for you to give and much appreciated as being of value for the other side? This becomes your tradable, or became your tradable concession. Conversely, what was of little cost to the other party but much appreciated by you? That became their tradable concession. Managing a negotiation by being mindful of the power distribution is a winning strategy. Please always leave some crumbs on the table for the lesser party. Build a golden bridge of retreat for the other party too, so that they may go back and deliver a face-saving victory speech. If they can claim a partial victory, you can claim more value from the gold on the table. Next, finding your power. Power can come in 4 forms. P, P, S, W, S, D. Have I confused you? Personal power, professional power, social width and social depth. Let's start with personal power. Question: what is your character, or the character of your organization? Are you famous for being determined, dogged, or never giving up? This can be a source of power. What about your tone? Are you articulate and confident? And are you practicing to improve here? And your persona? Do people know you for your passion, principles, and integrity? All this adds up to the aura of your personal power and brand. Next, professional power. What experience do you have? Have you been there, done that, and got the t-shirt? Are you proud of your deal sheet and your past victories? What about qualifications? This is for everybody. Write down a few numbers of what you've achieved so far. I love doing this exercise inside a coaching session with somebody aiming to improve. People are always surprised as they find their numbers and accolades are greater than they had imagined. And your level, sometimes you can find that you are greatly regarded by your own community, and this helps bolster and boost your personal power and confidence too. Next, social width. What is the size of the pool of people that you know and have at least basic access to? This is your width. How many have you got? If it's less than 10, you haven't really got width at the moment. More than 300? Then you're a player. The record. I encountered a young student a couple of years ago. He had 15,000 friends on Facebook. Wow. But let's move on. Social depth. Depth is more powerful and useful than width. Who do you know? Who could be or is your advocate, sponsor, or champion? There's a famous UK coach, Nick Rickson, and he says something quite funny. Says the evidence statement of someone who is a great advocate, sponsor, and supporter for you is when they tell the other party about you, do what they say and pay what they ask. That is a great sponsor, and it represents a deep relationship. So we come to action time. Make a quick note, scribble something down. What is the cost and benefit of having too much power? In this exercise we have just done, did you note down the sources of your power? Where was it? Personal? Professional? Social width? Or the mega one, social depth? What have you got? And how will you use your power? Next section, ally building and network expansion. If you want next year to be better than last year, this is an important section for you. It starts with mapping who you will be connected to, then maybe adding what you need from these people. We have API as a guide to their usefulness. Do they have authority? Having people in your network that can decide things. Power, having people who are movers and shakers and they can make things happen. And influence, the golden-tongued players that can convince anybody of anything. Then it's about mapping these people. If you can't get hold of them or they won't do the job for you when asked, then they're of little use. So mapping their proximity and level of influence, maybe in visual form, can be very useful. Contacting them rather like asking someone to mentor you. Asking someone for help in an honest and sincere way when a high-value project will benefit your community can generate surprisingly positive results. Just formulate a truthful and leveraged ask and see what happens. You may develop and build a communication plan around this activity. Action time. So work with what you have. Have you got a core of people that you are already in contact with and will represent a good place to start? Do something every day. Ask people to help you directly and ask people who they know and who can be of assistance to you too. And ask to get warm introductions, as this will really speed up the process. When you take action every day, within a month or two, your contact base will look super healthy. Next section, engaging with influential people. Here we have steps on the ladder of engagement: aware, interested, interacted, engaged, and championing. The clever bit here is, how do you move up step by step? If people are aware of you, you can make basic contact with them, hint at your appeal, and ask them what they want too. This can get you from the aware stage to the interested stage. To move up from interested to interacted requires generating relevant dialogue, possibly a trade, and certainly a deeper exchange of your mutual motivation. So you're now at interacted. How can you move up from here? Pitching your case, making your argument, and supporting your project claim with numbers and proof of concept. So this may well get you to the engaged stage. You can stop here, or you can go up and on for the bonus level. The bonus level, championing, is having them use their time, money and resources to champion your cause, advocate for you, and become a critical sponsor. To get to this level, you need wins, charisma, and mutual exchange, which they then see as valuable. It is the most exciting level on the ladder of engagement. Action time. For your major contacts, work out honestly, where are they now on the 5-step ladder, and choose activities that fit this level or their level and will move your counterpart up the ladder of engagement. And remember this, if you suffer a few moments of doubt, when you ask a good person something, you give them the opportunity to say a big fat yes to you and your idea. So just go for it. Moving now from your ever-expanding list of allies, advocates, sponsors and friends, we look across to the other side of the negotiation table, the next section. Dealing with difficult people. Here we will expand on just a couple of types and ask: A, what are they doing which is so annoying? B, why are they doing it? And C, how can you best cope with their behaviour? Number 1, the bullying, angry type. What do? They manifest high power, tell or command, and may gaslight you or humiliate you in public. They are manifesting a win-lose attitude where they win and you lose. And often they treat a negotiation like a game or just sport. It is not pleasant to deal with these people. Why are they doing it? Introducing an element of empathy here, often the bullied become the bullies. And the first rule is to protect yourself. Having said this, the quickest way to neutralise aggression is to stand up to it. But please be careful. A funny tip, which is also true, is to find a big bully to bully them. A lion will scare the cats away from the garden. If you can contain their unbridled lust for victory, you might take a sidebar and renegotiate your communication exchanges. Sometimes they are simply unaware of what they're doing and the impact this is having on you. You might be able to sell them on a better outcome in exchange for entering into a richer dialogue. Next type, 2, the passive quiet type. What do? These can be sensitive, reticent, silent and reluctant to engage. Why? They may be introverted, avoiders of conflict and negotiation, or they may have been traumatized in the past by losing when taking an outsized risk. Action and engagement. Ask yourself, where are they comfortable and more fluid? Maybe this is the place to start. Build bridges piece by piece, give them time. Taking more steps and accommodating can work well here. Give them something freely and early on to create a little psychological obligation as well. Next type, 3, the critic questioner. This style is manifest in interruptions, challenging you, asking tough questions, and with their favourite W question being why? And this feels hostile. It breaks your flow and can leave you feeling somewhat diminished. Why are they doing this? It could be cultural. They could be a deductive thinker. They may have been brought up in a perfectionist or high achiever family setting. They have developed a detail focus, a passion for logic, and feel rewarded by analysis. Let's face it, whilst it is irritating, especially if this is not your style, it can also be used to your advantage. Action. Take a breath, be prepared to go into more detail, telegraph the availability of more facts and information, and don't overly engage with them emotionally. Take your time and give them a bit of space and reframe their input in your own mind, as they are providing free quality control for your side of the table. Whisper, thank you so much. The next type, 4, the resistor. What do? They say, no, shan't, can't, couldn't, mustn't, won't. They are irritating. Why are they doing this? Again, it can be cultural. This way has become a natural process for them, and it must have worked for them before, or they would have stopped doing it. This may give them a source of significance, importance, presence, which they crave. Action. Again, take a breath. Calmly counter and dig into their reasoning. For example, when they say, we mustn't, you can counter by asking, says whom? The next type, 5, the troublemaker. These people seem to be setting out every day to be difficult. This shows up in blocking moves, challenges, pessimism, threats, walkouts, shouting, and general obstruction. Why are they doing this? They may be games players. This is a tactical disturbance, or it may be evidence of a deeper psychological damage too. Action. If you're facing a games player, learn to play their game. Detach from your need for civility or rational analysis and play against them to win. Remember, for them, this is just a transaction. And the final type, 6, the victim. What do? They play the ironic, tactical, or real victim. Why do they do this? This can be a negotiation strategy. Yes, it is cynical, but some people do not see the need for integrity or morality when they sit around the negotiation table, justifying any untruths or manipulation to themselves as simply being a means to an end. Action. With the victim, who is claiming to be powerless, find where some of their power actually lies. Everyone has some power, and then have them own it and move on from here. Difficult people action. We have skimmed over 6 difficult people types, described some of their behaviours, hopefully explained some motivation for why they behave this way, and given a few tips of how you can deal best with these difficult people. There is no substitute for practice and rehearsal. So if you know who you're going to be dealing with or facing next week, ask a colleague to role-play some of their more irritating characteristics. Then you can learn to tolerate the disturbance, counter their behaviours, tame the beast, and get to a richer exchange of information. Next section. We promised you an outrageous hypothesis earlier, and here it is, that there are only 7 arguments that can be used against you around the negotiation table. Let's pile straight in. 1. The king pitch. Here a social leader, someone with extreme hierarchical power, asks you for something or asks you a favour, with the simple logic that you will theoretically incur their pleasure and be owed a favour by them in the future. When you think about this, it instantly diminishes the usefulness of the trade. In reality, I can guarantee you that most kings won't throw out favours for anybody and everybody all the time. It is an asymmetrical arrangement at best and unilateral at worst. Conversely, the king figure can threaten you and say that if you withhold support for one of their wishes or whims, you will incur their displeasure. Whilst this is more likely to come to fruition, your analysis here of the percentage chance of this occurring is critical. By the way, if you wish to use this for yourself, either be the king or queen or borrow the voice of someone who actually is the king or queen. Next, 2. The dream-nightmare contrast. This will be familiar to most people. Think of pharmaceutical sales. The doctor may say, if you take this pill you'll get better, and if you don't you'll get worse. Fairly obvious. But the symmetry is beguiling, poetic and effective. It's always worth calculating your what if you do and then your what if you don't. Next, 3. The trade. In the history of the world, where there is peace, this has been a contributing mechanism that has supported that peace. Trade centres on perceived values. One object will have 2 unique and different perceived values depending on each participant's needs, interests, desires and wants. E.g., a glass of water has a different value if you're standing by a waterfall or suffering in the middle of a desert. Here, work out what is abundant or of lower value for you as the giver and of higher perceived value for the other party to receive. Conversely, work out what you want and that exists in abundance on the other side. This represents the essence of a mutually advantageous trade. 4. The rational. Here, the analytical types relish getting their calculators out and talking about ROI, return on investment, margin, profit, or CBA, cost-benefit analysis. When you agree on the methodology and measurement, this can be quick, no nonsense, and a way towards logical agreement, reached quickly. 5. The lifeboat argument. When the other party are at their lowest point, you may feel like offering salvation, hope and rescue. Referring back to our power conversation earlier, you may not always expect gratitude on the other side of this, as the pain of being that low can cause permanent psychological and emotional damage. 6. Self-worth and conscience. This is perhaps the most powerful psychological technique. This is being used when we hear, "This is bigger than both of us," or "I know you have high levels of integrity and will do the right thing." This triggering method asks us to be consistent and congruent with our own perception of our own identity and values. Put another way, we do who we are and we don't do who we are not. Number 7, I've cheated a bit here and will give you a summary of Robert Cialdini's 6 immutable laws of influence. Reciprocity. Give early to create a sense of psychological obligation that will probably lead to something being returned to you. Scarcity. In pre-COVID days, when we booked a hotel or flight, the website said only 1 seat or 1 room remaining at this price level. We panicked and we bought it quickly, i.e. scarcity produces action. Authority. Humans respond to manifestations of power. We allow doctors to take all sorts of liberties because they're wearing a white coat and stethoscope, have nice offices with certificates hanging on the walls, and their title represents the trapping and clues to their power and authority. By the way, what trappings and titles do you have? Consistency. If I ask you something small like, will you stay late for just 5 minutes next Thursday, and you say yes, you are building this into our contract and your perception of our relationship. In this example, you are the self-sacrificing super professional. If a week later I then ask you to stay late for 2 hours, you will find yourself in a dilemma. You probably don't want to, but saying yes will be consistent with your contract as negotiated, and to an extent your new adjusted brand and identity. Liking. Never underestimate the positive effect of charm, humour and good looks. Is George Clooney in the house? Yes, maybe he can tell us more. Consensus. This is a fascinating and sometimes scary proposition. When we feel part of a group, we sublimate our individual and personal needs to submit ourselves to the values and laws of that group. And we allow our behaviour to be policed by members of that group. What action should we be taking? Your homework is to learn more about the ones you use and ask how effective are you being when deploying them. And to learn more about the ones you want to use and practice them too until you are fluent. And now you have enough information to spot when other people are using these methods against you, and so you can now defend yourself against their excessive or manipulative use. Moving on, the next element to get you ready to be super assertive, become a super influencer, and grow into being a much more effective negotiator is listening. Listening. Most people, most of the time, are not listening. Level 1 of not listening is competitively waiting for your turn to speak, attempting to outstory the current storyteller. If I say I took a 1-week holiday in Menorca in the Mediterranean, and it was very quiet, that is the smaller island, you, the competitive non-listener, will retort with, "Ha! That's nothing. I took a 3-week holiday in Mallorca, the bigger island, and it was so dynamic, and Tom Hanks was there as well." This is not listening. Level 2 of not listening, your favourite song sounds like me, 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 me. You are only listening with reference to yourself and what is of direct benefit to you. Empathy and the needs of the other party are absent. Level 3 of not listening is the advisor consultant. You are specifically listening out for the opportunity to say something like, "Well, no wonder that didn't work. What you should have done was the other thing." Finally, we get to level 4, actual listening, active listening. This is manifest in listening quietly, taking in the information, processing the information in an attempt to understand it, not interrupting, only questioning the speaker for clarification, waiting until they have finished completely, then paraphrasing what you think they have said to check that you fully understood it, and finally asking them, do they feel that you have listened to them and understood them as they need to be listened to and as they want to be understood. Action. Learn to know what is not listening, call it out when you see it, and learn what active listening actually and really is, and practice it every day. Next section, face. Stella ting to me. Now we move into a more subtle area. It is not whether you are not listening or actively listening. Here we talk about face, dignity, power and status. People, including you, will do all sorts of things to maintain, save and restore their face. If you invest in this artful area, you will be able to claim greater value, more value for your side, and do so more of the time. The art is to raise your self-awareness and understand who you are, as well as spotting the face needs of the other party, sat across the table or sharing a screen with you. Today we're going to talk about face types, loss prevention and face restoration, with no lotions or face cream being applied. Let's get started with face types. Which one appeals to you? Autonomy. Are you into independence and control? You feel in equilibrium when you are allowed to get on with your work, set boundaries and enjoy a degree of privacy. Is that you? Or inclusion, the opposite of autonomy. You wish to be seen as a worthy companion belonging to the group, team or community. Membership is of importance to you and you will be pleasant, friendly and cooperative to maintain your membership ticket. Is that you? Approval, reliability and competence. Here, your face needs are driven by the need for praise, recognition and maintaining a brand, for being 100% reliable, super able and competent. Is this your face zone? By the way, we can quickly see that this is an expensive strategy. 1 hour's work might get you to 90% perfection or quality. A second hour's work may bump this up to 94% quality. And a third hour's work may only bump you up to 94.5% quality or perfection. Can we see and appreciate this formula is one of diminishing returns, so chasing perfection can be extremely expensive. Moral or ethical? Super relevant to this conference, your personal brand and face needs centre on being known for your principles, making and taking a stand on issues and behaving in a way that's congruent with what you truly and deeply believe in. Does this one hit the spot for you? It is very useful to understand your own face type. You can then focus on actions that help you maintain it and be more efficient in your day job. And you can protect yourself against the threat the other negotiation party may present or throw at you, so preventing a reduction in your capacity to negotiate due to being wound up and successfully manipulated by the other team. The second part of Stella Tingtubi's philosophy, loss prevention strategies. There are many ways in which we can maintain our face during negotiation. Please note some are much more beautiful, elegant and classy than others. Credibility, this is a fairly obvious one. You introduce yourself and share some powerful information that lends authority to your brand. Do you remember what I talked about at the beginning of this workshop? I have worked with 5 governments and written 6 books. Those 7 words get me past many gatekeepers. Action. What have you got? When you work on your numbers, you'll be surprised how credible you really are. You are maybe even more credible than you remember. Suspended judgment. This is a very useful one at the beginning of a negotiation, especially if there is a large perceived power gap between the parties. It is typified by the phrase, "Before you make up your mind, please hear me out." You've just opened up a window and can insert your pitch in here and hopefully be listened to. Pre-disclosure. We could also call this levelling. We've all made fools of ourselves at different points in our lives. So what I'm about to tell you, this is a vulnerable method, so it must be used with some caution. The pre-apology. This works well with more sensitive audiences. Here, when you begin with an apology, you lower your status and perceived threat, drawing your audience closer to you and creating the possibility for trust and more intimate dialogue. Hedging. A very clever method during a negotiation. I may be off base here, but please hear me out. This is so clever. You can now throw in an outlier suggestion that will either be seriously considered, in which case you take full credit for it, or it will be thrown out with some laughter, in which case, no worries. You have already inoculated yourself by saying it is a hedge. We could call this your insurance policy. Disclaimer or self-deprecation. I can see I am surrounded by experts and I am but a novice in this field. This overlaps with the apology and again reduces your perceived power, which can be of use in opening up the other party to reveal their values or their true intentions. By the way, all of these must be used with integrity or you will end up being labelled as a super slick or slimy salesperson manipulator. So don't say you haven't been warned. In the last part of Stella Tingtumi's wonderful face work, we look at restorative strategies. You have just taken a hit in the negotiations and you need to move rapidly to restore your team's faith in you and your opposition's faith in you too. So what action can you take? Again, some of these are more elegant and some are downright ugly. Direct aggression, pumping up your chest, raising your voice and creating a space in front of you, resulting in other people thinking you are muscular and strong. I did say some of these are ugly. This one can have a high risk and a high cost attached. Excuses. This is not recommended in normal trading conditions, but maybe it can be used in a lifeboat scenario. I didn't want to sign the contract in the first place. Justification. Yes, I promised to do X, but it was no big deal. Humour. Please take this strategy seriously. If you have a strong ego, this can be a very cheap way to get out of trouble in a negotiation. Remember, if you tell a joke against yourself and punish yourself, you are only being beaten by a few of your own words. Contrast this now. If you wait for the other party to punish you for a mistake, you know that this is going to be much worse than what you can do to yourself. Physical remediation, so replace, repair and mend. Passive aggression and avoidance. This again is not recommended for everyday dialogue. Do you remember the idiom though? He who fights and runs away lives to fight another day. Apology. We end with perhaps the most obvious one. Sincerely saying the word sorry and meaning it. Action. Work out what your face type is. Smile, own it and align your behaviours accordingly. Understand the tools you need for loss prevention. And practice restoration strategies, the ones that feel right for you. Offer. By the way, we have given you a lot of ideas today. I know many of you will be scrabbling and scribbling to write down notes all the time. To help you digest these methods and become a better influencer, be more assertive and get more from your negotiations, we have put together 11 influencing strategies in a form that you can print out and stick on the wall as a wall chart. This can be a good warm-up resource before your next power call or negotiation. To receive your copy, simply email me and I will email you back the document. Easy. We've now reached the summary. You have worked hard to keep up with the content. Let us now review what you've covered today and help you identify the key actions that will take you forward to make your next negotiation more comfortable and more effective for the community that you represent. We looked at where it all goes wrong. Much of that centered on the other party being technically better at negotiation, maybe because they've had more practice or they've been more thoroughly trained. We acknowledge that other parties can have more power or seem to have all the power. We now know that this is not the best situation for them to be in. We can find ourselves unprepared for a surprise, like a Hollywood legal drama, where a Henry Fonda, Sidney Poitier, or Atticus Finch, aka Gregory Peck, when you need them. And when one party is not listening, or both parties are not listening, it is never going to end well. Power. We talked about the mythical properties of power, how having too much has negative consequences, and that you never experience the total absence of power, ever. And that with some effort and reflection you can discover your sources of power, your personal character, your professional experience, your social width, who do you have some sort of influence and access to, and your social depth, the people who will really help you. The ally network, probably the most useful thing you can do away from the negotiation table. Get ready to schmooze, interact and deepen your relationship with the movers and shakers in your community. The people who have the A, authority to decide, the P, power to make things happen, and the I, influencing skill to convince the reluctant. We talked about mapping who you know and developing a timetable or project plan to contact these people and build them into your ally network. The ladder of engagement. We had some fun here. Speaking of making contact, appealing to their good nature, articulating your request whilst reminding them of what is in it for them. WIIFT. We commended trading, interacting, providing proof, and maybe using the contrast method. Do you remember that one? What if you help me, and what if you don't? At the top of the engagement steps, when you have worked your magic, you will have people who are advocates, sponsors, and champions, spending their own energy, money, and time to actively promote your interests. Wow! We talked of difficult people and went through a range of archetypes describing their behaviours, why they behave this way, and what you can do to counter the difficulties they throw at you. We talked about 6 basic types. Do you remember? The bully, the quiet type, the critic, questioner, the resistor, the troublemaker, and the victim. All are doing what they do for a reason, and there is always a tactic for you to deploy. And our cheeky hypothesis that there are only 7 arguments. Do you remember what they were? The king pitch, the dream or nightmare outcome, the trading and exchanging of value. You give what is low to you, they receive what is high, perceived value for them, and vice versa. Rational, you get the people in the finance department to fire up their computers and calculators. Lifeboat, here one party is rescued by the other. Self-worth and conscience. This sophisticated model trades on people's honour and can produce amazing results if used with integrity. Influence. Here we whiz through the 6 laws of influence. Reciprocity, scarcity, authority, consistency, liking and charm, and finally, consensus. Work done on building your influencing skills will give you a tool bag that will help you negotiate to claim more value for your community, and it will allow you to protect yourself and not be overtly manipulated by the other party. Listening and active listening. We talked of the 3 not listenings. Competitively waiting to win big as you crush the other party with your better story, not listening. Me, selfishly filtering everything out except the content that will benefit you. Unwanted advisor not listening so that you can give your slightly superior, well, what you should have done, obviously, is. And finally, we get to actual active listening. What does this include? Listening, processing, aiming to understand, not interrupting, questioning to deepen your comprehension, and checking in with the other party to make sure that you've understood, possibly paraphrasing to provide proof that you've listened, processed, and understood too. We've just covered Stella Tingtumi's face ideas. What face type are you? Knowing this will help you. With loss prevention strategies too. Which are you going to use? Which are best for you? And what restorative actions will also serve you best? Now we leave you with some homework. Power. Are you going to be honest about how much power you really have? And are you going to analyze and find further sources of power? 7 arguments. Are you going to smile as you recognize which techniques you use most frequently and expand your repertoire and add a few too? And learn to defend yourself against the most threatening techniques that the other parties may or will use against you. Your circle of influence. Are you going to take action every day to build your ally network? Both the width and the depth. Are you going to study the ladder of engagement and commit to a plan that moves a couple of people up to the championing, advocate and sponsor level? How exciting will that be? Difficult people. Are you now ready to take those most irritating characters, understand where they are really coming from, and deploy tactics to improve exchange and get to more constructive outcomes? And will you, from this day forth, stop not listening and start actively listening? We will see. As we come to the end of this workshop, my wish for you is this. You will own and perfect effective influencing techniques and methods for leveraging minority interests for gain and inclusion for your community. And you will spend time finding your hidden sources of power to access representation, equity, and self-determination. And you will prepare well for your next negotiation to claim more value for your community. This has been Matthew Hill. Thank you very much.